What's going on YouTube? My name is Simon Sniped and welcome to the channel. In today's video, we're going to take a look at everyone's favorite child, Sigma. She's currently available on the global servers, and if you're considering pulling for her, do stay until the end. I'll be going over her character in general, her stats and skills, and how does she fare in PvE and PvP, and finally, my own verdict on her as a character. Like always, if you have any suggestions or feedback on how I improve this series, do leave them in the comment section below, hit the subscribe button for more videos, and without further ado, let's get into it. Sigma to me has one of the more memorable backstory, not because they had an event for it and everyone is stepping over her, me included. Sigma is at her core a Terra brain of a very early type, which is highly intelligent but more vulnerable to corruption race. If you're wondering what a Terra brain is, technically it looks a little bit like the admin bot that you are, but in a flat black slab. Although a lot of her is still a mystery, we know Sigma got her name during her character development from a nameless bot into one that began to sprout into something more. Later found by the administrator, which is you, she then continues her days as part of the Coffin Company as well. In the game of Counterside, Sigma is a 4-cost mech tower unit that doesn't move from where she is deployed. She cannot be healed and will gradually reduce her own HP after every special skill cast, forcing her to leave the field after a certain amount of time. From how her stats are distributed, she isn't meant to take hits, dodge, or do much damage. Now, rather than her stats, Sigma serves a very unique function in the game which can be reflected from her skill kit. So before I explain how that works, let's move on to her skills. Sigma's basic attack fires a laser beam which hits up to 3 closest targets, dealing direct damage, albeit very little. Very straightforward. Moving on to her passive skill, Sigma Protocol. By being on the field, Sigma gives all of her allied units roll disadvantage damage resistant up to 38% at level 5, and also provides roll advantage damage increased by 60% when this skill is maxed. If you're wondering what her passive buff actually does, roll advantage damage resistance is applied when the incoming damage actually comes from a unit type that you are resistant to. For example, when a striker is actually hit by a ranger unit, in which case she increases the amount of damage resisted by an additional 38%. As for the roll advantage damage, she increases the amount of damage your units do towards those which are weak against yours. Her special skill is known as Square Dance. Now, whenever this skill is cast, she'll restore 1 deployment resource in exchange for 15% of her maximum HP. At the maximum level, she gains a shield equivalent to 20% of her max HP for 10 seconds, which only applies for the first 3 skill casted in the entire fight. Her signature ultimate skill called Daddy Help summons a daddy bot that cannot be healed. Now the Defender class Daddy Bot acts as an additional body on the field and has a special ability which taunts the enemy for 3 seconds and reduces their attack by 20%, plus restoring 1 deployment resource when the skill is maxed. Now that we have a general idea of what her stats and her skills are, here is my personal analytical summary to her design. Now, because of her defensive and offensive stats both are comparatively low across the board, she isn't there to be a tank or to dish out damage like a common DPS, yet she is still considered to be more of an offensive character because of her skill set. Sigma's entire skill kit revolves around 2 main features. Number 1, reducing and increasing the damage potential of your units, and number 2, restoring deployment resources as she casts her skills. We can then draw the conclusion here that her main role in a fight is actually to provide an increased survivability and DPS by a decent margin, exponentially depending on how geared your units are. Her secondary role in a fight would be somewhat of a battery for deployment resource. Now, in certain conditions or game modes, this is one of the more overpowered advantage you can get, which could help make or break your strategy. So how do you want to play Sigma? Now, Sigma should always be placed out of harm's way regardless in PvE or PvP situations. Usually that means under the safety of a ship, but nobody can fault you if you're confident to say you can keep her alive elsewhere on the battlefield. Since the more damage she takes, the lesser time she can cast a special skill, it is essential to keep her untouched to maximize the advantage she provides to your team. The rate she restores deployment resource is highly dependent on how quickly she can cast skills and how many times she can do so before you have to redeploy her again. Which also means Skill Haste is your best friend. Her ultimate skill summons an additional free defender for the team, which is always a plus in most situations. Now, even though it isn't as tanky as a dedicated tank, it is, well, still something, right? And it does contribute to some degree to a lot of other endgame modes, such as Danger Close, where sometimes one additional fodder to take hits makes all the difference. Since the entire reason for Sigma's existence is to cast skills and stay alive, gearing Sigma is extremely straightforward. The primary substats you want to stack on as much as possible is Skill Haste, which also implies that the only set bonus you need is cooldown reduction. Any other defensive stats can be applied to make her daddybot just a little bit tankier, but ideally you want to build a Hummingbird Gordius 72% CDR set with ranged damage resistance. Although I keep saying that, honestly, priority is Skill Haste, everything else is just a bonus. Now let's talk about how she fares in PvE. Sigma is a support unit which is powerful, but not enough to carry a team. Meaning to say, just because you have her, you cannot just forget about what's essential for the team to work. Although she reduces the damage taken from enemies that you have a role weakness against, but it also means that raw incoming damage from sources that does not have a role advantage is not being reduced. Your team will still die. Vice versa, if you're in a fight where your DPS does not have a role advantage over the enemy, her buff doesn't do jack shit for you. As for her deployment resources restoring ability, it's a really slow long-term investment because it only triggers when she casts her skills. At the early stages of the game, without high amount of skill haste, it's going to take a long time to actually generate a worthy return of investment. So if you bring her along in drawn-out fights like raids, she's an absolutely broken support to have, but other than that, not so much. She is, however, used very frequently in Danger Close bosses like Tyrant Sword in the coming near future. Now let's touch a little bit on PvP. Now Sigma is amazing when the weak allows her to shine, more than any other unit in my opinion. In ranked battles specifically, Sigma can fit into any and all stall team comps as long as two conditions are met. Number 1, Awakened Nayubin is banned or not played that week. Number 2, when highly effective rush strategies are not at their peak. For example, maybe the ship is being banned, or maybe certain units in the composition is also receiving a ban. If the conditions above are fulfilled, there is no reason the first person to deploy Sigma onto the field will actually lose, unless dealt with a bad hand or just outright outplayed. This is all possible because Sigma is able to camp at the furthest reach of your enemies and do her thing. And also with you playing against your opponent's role advantage, which you should, you've gained an edge over the edge which you already have. Just so I don't spoil the fun in creating teams for Sigma, I'll leave the possible team comps to your creativity. Go ham. As a general unit score, I'd give it a 7 out of 10 on whether or not if you should pull for her when her banner is around. Now, if I were to judge her based on my personal preference, I'd say it's a definite pull, but considering she's dropped pretty early in the game and I believe most of us are starved for employment tickets, I'd say you should prioritize other more essential units over her, even if it pains me to say so. Now, the reason I suggest her as such is because having Sigma makes your already winning team win harder, but doesn't help your losing team win one, if that makes sense. And that's it for this unit review. Once again, if you like what you see, do leave a like and comment in the comment section. Comment what you like to see added in these reviews in the future, and I'll see what I can fit in them. Subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and until the next one, I'll see you guys again soon. Bye.